We have all seen those documentaries and videos of Stukas attacking, to the narrator talking about pinpoint accuracy and so on.
Immer wieder stoßen unsere Stukas vom Himmel herab und tragen Tod und Verderben in die Reihen der Gegner.
This has led to the belief that the Stuka was a very precise tool, able to consistently lob bombs right into the target, but there is never any data shown to you, the audience, that proves this. Luckily for us, I go to the German military archives, I can read German, and I have data. There are two things that they won't tell you in those documentaries regarding the Ju-87. First, the footage is original propaganda footage. It's curated by the German propaganda ministry to give the audience a specific image of that plane. Yes, that includes the footage in the background here as well. Keep that in mind as you are watching it. This is what German propaganda wanted the audience to see. Too many documentaries or YouTube videos do not critically evaluate this or the effect that such images might have on our conception and memory of the war. Second, and this is my pet peeve, but they keep showing you that famous half-roll inverted backflip of the Ju-87. Yes, that thing here. It's even found its way to Wikipedia in this, admittedly, very well made animation. Evidence suggests, however, that this move was for display purposes only. It is not practical. The Ju-87's manual doesn't account for it, and the dive bombing manual even advises against it. Also, the half roll forces the pilot to fight against the automatic trim settings of the dive recovery system that activates as soon as the dive brakes extend, making it even less practical, as I have shown in the previous video. In short, forget about the History Channel and let's get hands-on with the real primary sources. I know all of you love them because all of you glorious supporters made our last crowdfunder happen for the Stuka book, of course. The book is bursting from the seams with primary data, and exactly to the day 1 year ago we signed off on the final manuscript, sent the book to print and then to all of you. To celebrate this, we have a 25% discount on our standard copy until the 20th of March if you buy directly via the link in the description. If you ever wanted to pick up a book about the Ju-87 dive bomber, get this one. There are many aspects that influence accuracy. Next to the pilot's training, there is experience and intuition, the planning as well as the reconnaissance of the target before the attack, and then of course the tactics used during the attack, the intensity of the AA fire from enemy defenses, meteorological conditions like clouds, haze and wind, and also the pilot's morale. Since it is heavily dependent on individual circumstance and context, it is impossible to get a clean average on accuracy. But we do have data that deals with the accuracy requirements to crews to check out as a Ju-87 pilot. Arguably, training is the most important element as it sets the foundation for everything else, and because I have that data, it can also be qualified accordingly. So let's grab our book and go to page 118 to 120, and we'll see the exercises that Ju-87 pilots had to check out from. And we can see there are 3 different exercises with different accuracy requirements right here. Actually, before we go into that, you all take a piece of paper and write down what you think was the maximum distance a Stuka pilot was allowed to place his bombs from the target center, and the average distance he was supposed to achieve in all his runs. And then we compare that figure with the real ones at the very end. Now, Ju-87 crews were subject to 3 different exercises: the preliminary, the main and the unit exercises, and these got progressively more difficult. Students were partitioned into the second instruction group and the first instruction group, and they had to check out from the second group in the first training year and then pass on to the first group, where they eventually graduated from when fulfilling the accuracy requirements. The attack altitude for most exercises was usually around 3,000 meters or more, and the bomb release altitude was usually around 700 meters. These were generally flown at an angle of 70 degrees, because this was deemed as the best attack angle for the Ju-87. Yes, not 90 degrees, but 70 degrees, as it balanced out accuracy, speed and survivability of the dive bomber. Attacks were carried out against a target cross with a center or a 50 by 50 meter target square. The following are the accuracy results required by both instruction groups for the 8 preliminary exercises. For the second group, depending on the task, the practice bomb is not to impact further from the target center than 100 to 80 meters, with the average not above 55 to 40 meters. For the first instruction group, this drops to a maximum distance of 75 to 70 meters, with an average distance of 45 to 30 meters. As you can see, the main concern is to decrease that maximum distance to the target. For the main exercises then, the respective requirements were 80 to 70 meters max distance and an average of 50 to 40 meters, and 70 meters max with an average of 40 to 30 meters respectively. On attacks against a target square of 50 meters, the requirements were 80 meters or 70 to 60 meters maximum respectively, with one hit on the target with any of the 3 carried bombs. The attacks against the target square were the only ones made with live bombs. The unit exercises are the most complex, but focus on unit cohesion during the attack rather than honing the skill of the pilot in terms of accuracy. Here the requirements for a unit of usually 3 Ju-87s is a max distance of 80 to 70 meters on any bomb, with an average of 50 to 450 meters. The maximum elapsed time of impact between the first and the last bomb is 30 to 25 seconds. One of these exercises is also to be flown with live bombs. On attacks against a 50 target square, the max distance is 70 meters with one hit required directly on the target by the whole unit. To sum this up then, as a rule of thumb, to graduate a Ju-87 pilot should never throw further than 70 meters from the target center and on average be within 40 meters of the target, plus be able to maintain unit cohesion. Let me know how close you were in the comments below. Now, depending on what you thought the accuracy was, you may consider the Ju-87 crew's requirement to be a lot more accurate or a lot less accurate than you anticipated. Of course, there will be cases where Ju-87s were able to destroy a pinpoint target, like, say, a tank or a very small bunker in a dive bombing attack. But the German conception of the Ju-87 in the early war was not at all concerned with such very small tactical targets. Instead, the Ju-87 was conceptualized as simply a more accurate bomber. So basically you take a traditional bomber aircraft dropping ordnance from the horizontal and you make it more accurate. And that is essentially a dive bomber. That's how they conceptualized it. Nothing explains this better than a single line in the main instructional file for the Ju-87, where it calls Ju-87 the Scharfschütze unter den Kampffliegern, the sniper amongst the bombers. We can also see this clearly in the intended targets for the plane. The main list includes static or area targets as part of an operational conception of air warfare that focused on interdiction and also strategic efforts, albeit that these targets are smaller than what could be reliably destroyed by traditional bombers without the use of extensive resources. That's why the dive bomber was used. Only in the extended target list do moving and smaller targets start to appear. But again, there you can see the focus more on the operational level rather than the tactical level. With this fixation on relatively small fixed targets, the accuracy requirements make sense. If we have a single bomb consistently within a 50 meter square and not beyond 70 meters from a target, you can see how this enables the Ju-87 to fulfill the task that it is meant to complete, especially once you factor in multiple aircraft. At the same time, soft area targets like artillery positions or trenches or convoys would be endangered through bomb blasts and shrapnel, even if you cannot achieve a direct hit. At the same time, it also demonstrates that the Luftwaffe understood that hitting small, nimble targets like tanks with a dive bomber was exceedingly difficult. Not just because their comparatively small size made them difficult targets, but they were also very difficult to visually acquire at altitudes above 3,000 meters than a static target that leaves a footprint in the actual ground. In fact, in order to spot tanks, crews often tended to look out more for track marks and then went for wherever the track marks stopped than trying to spot the physical tank itself. Of course, we can factor in the effect that bomb attacks make in terms of damaging, not destroying the target, or in the way it impacts morale. And then of course we can also have a discussion on the low altitude sorties that Ju-87s flew, mainly with the D model as Schlachtflieger carrying bombs, and then of course they also transitioned to those cannon pods. But I don't want to get too sidetracked here because there is actually very little data on the accuracy that those sorties had. One caveat I would add is ships. Ships are fairly large and fit reasonably well within the accuracy requirements of a Ju-87. Sturzkampfgeschwader consistently claimed high tonnage figures for sunk ships. However, at least from my examination of this, cross-referencing specific Ju-87 claims versus the actual ship sunk figures in both German and British primary sources, the success appears far more limited than commonly claimed. You'll find more of that and many other things, of course, in the book. Perhaps I'll also make a follow-up to this video at some point. The effect of the Ju-87 was to combine a, for the time, reasonably high degree of accuracy with a significant enough payload and bomb saturation, paired with the element of surprise in some cases, to then deliver that result that other platforms at the time could not deliver with the same investment of resources. In that sense, it was accurate and it fulfilled its intended role. But that doesn't mean that it was the precursor to a Maverick missile. When attacking fixed targets, the results of the Ju-87 tended to be enough to heavily damage or outright destroy the target. Even if the target was not destroyed, the damage would of course necessitate repairs, seriously impairing then the movement of units or supplies, while of course ground units may also be injured or have their morale shattered. And if they're fixed targets, those may indeed be out of operation for some time. These effects tend to be then more common than the outright destruction of individual bunkers, tanks or trenches, though they are also much harder to qualify and quantify, which is why they are, I guess, so often forgotten in the media world, where YouTube videos, newspapers, media channels, documentaries, movies, series and video games focus mainly on the pure numbers game rather than the context. Big thank you to all the people that of course made this book happen and made it a reality. We are really happy with the feedback we got on it, and it is really just so satisfying to know that there's so much interest out there for new research, putting those primary sources front and center. If you want to pick up this book, remember 25% off directly via the link in the description. No, don't go to Amazon on this one, directly via the link in the description, and that is until March the 20th of this year, 2023. Let us know what you think of the book, of course. Big thank you also to Real Time History for their support with providing footage for this video. Have a great day and see you in the sky.